Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the June 11th, 2013 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda, or should be copies of our agenda, on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so and would like to pick one up and follow along with our proceedings tonight, we would invite you to do so. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as with respect to items that are not on our agenda tonight. And that's the segment we finally call General Comments. And that will be item 4. But before we get there, it is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I would ask that everyone please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And on this lovely June day, I'd like to ask our village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett? Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which pertains to minutes of prior council meeting minutes. We have one set of meeting minutes on our agenda to approve tonight, and those are our council meeting minutes from our June 4th, 2013 regular meeting. Are there any questions, comments, changes, or corrections from any members of the village council with respect to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Great. Those minutes are approved. Well, just like that, we are at the promised item 4 on our agenda tonight, which is reserved for public comment. These are questions or comments of the general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda. And while you think of questions to ask during that segment, I'm going to do something that we like to call proclamations. And it is with great pride that we give the village's second ever green business certificate. We previously awarded a business here in Downers Grove, acknowledging them as a Downers Grove green business for their contributions to conservation and green energy and things of that nature. So we're very glad to be recognizing our second business here in Downers Grove, Competitive Lawn Service. And we have representatives from Competitive Lawn Service here tonight who I'm sure will join me up in front of the camera very shortly. And then I'll invite them to maybe give us a word or two about some of the motivations behind being a green business. But you're sort of doubly green. But we'll get back to that in a minute. But let me read the proclamation. Whereas Competitive Lawn Service Incorporated, located at 1355 Warren Avenue in the village of Downers Grove, provides landscape maintenance services to residential, commercial, and municipal customers. And whereas Competitive Lawn Service Incorporated has been operating in the village of Downers Grove since 1982. Well, that's a long time, since I graduated from high school in '83. Not to date myself. Whereas Competitive Lawn Service Incorporated has made substantial efforts to be environmentally friendly in the areas of waste reduction, recycling, water conservation, stormwater pollution prevention, energy conservation, transportation, public awareness, education, and all-important innovation. And whereas the Environmental Concerns Commission of the Village of Downers Grove has acknowledged the green business practices of Competitive Lawn Service Incorporated and has recognized Competitive Lawn Service, Inc. as a Downers Grove green business on May 9th, 2013. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim Competitive Lawn Service Incorporated to be an official Village of Downers Grove green business on this day, June 11th, 2013. Congratulations. Please come on up. Eric and Kelly are here from Competitive Lawn Service to accept the proclamation. Get you up here so that we're going to go by height. Oh, come on. You're not going to come up? Oh. Always the one behind the scenes. Congratulations, Eric. We'll take a quick shot here. I can give this to you. We'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. I don't know where the cameras are. Oh, there we go. I appreciate this. We've been working for a long time or whatever to try and do some of these green initiatives and been trying to figure out ways that we can do this. One of the things in 2008, we started running on alternative fuel. We actually have one of the first alternative fuel fill stations in the state of Illinois, and we put that in 2010, I believe. So all of our trucks and all of our lawn equipment now run on propane, alternative fuel. So we've been trying to do that. We also have a lot of different things as far as recycling, organic fertilization programs, and things like that that we've been doing. I started this business back in 1982. You were graduating in 83, and originally established it in Downers Grove. We've been located on Warren Avenue now for I think the last 12 years. So we've appreciated all of the support that we've had from the Village of Downers Grove and from the surrounding communities, and are going to continue to be vibrant and provide services for all of our customers. So thank you very much.
Well, terrific. Thank you much. Thank you very much, Eric. We appreciate hearing that, and congratulations, and thank you for all your efforts to promote green business here in Downers Grove. It's well deserved. Thank you very much for being here. And now that everyone's had plenty of time to think of questions of a general nature, we will resume with item 4, public comments. If there are any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not appearing on our agenda tonight, the protocol is to please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. Good evening, Ms. DeCola.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kathleen DeCola, 5413 Maplewood Place, and I'm here tonight in my capacity as president of the Downers Grove Public Library Board. And I'd like to invite the council and everyone to come to our next meeting, which will be Wednesday, June 26th at 7:30, for a presentation by our architects who are designing the library renovation project. We have a proposed plan, and they will have that plan and 3D renderings, and we would like the public to come and get their input and see what they think about it, and hear some comments while we're at this initial planning stage, and when we can really work the plan and change things. And so we would just love it if everyone would come. So, and also on the agenda, although I know this isn't part, this is the part for general comments, not on the agenda, we'd like to say thank you to Public Works and the village staff for the work they've done on the alley and the parking lot to make it safer and work better for our patrons. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much for being here. Always good to see you. And we're looking forward to all the exciting new things happening over at the library, and hopefully many of us can attend. Thank you, as well as the community. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Maggie Vanderleest. I live at 1233 Gilbert Avenue. And during the flood of April, about 9 truckloads of sediment has been deposited in my neighbor's yard, my yard and 2 of my neighbor's yards. We've been really trying to be patient with the village stormwater people. I do realize that people lost way more than their yards, but we have about 9 truckloads of sediment in our backyard, and the stormwater people have come out, and we received a letter on May 22nd that indicated that they would clean up the yards at no cost, but in return we'd have to give them 40 feet of permanent easement of our backyard for a future possible development to help with the creek stabilization. And as you can assume, not very many people signed the sheet. So now we are going back and forth with them, and they're not sure that they'll be able to help us clean up the yards. The estimate that I got was $10,000 to clean up the backyard, $3,000 just to get rid of the stuff. This is sand and glass and things that my kids can't play in. And half of my yard is 9 truckloads of this is in my backyard. And no one seems to be ready to help. I also have pictures of, we probably have lost about 5 feet of our backyard to erosion. There are trees with complete root balls exposed. They're eventually going to fall, and they're going to fall on the power lines that run right across the creek, and you're going to have electrified water. We can't wait till we form a committee or hire someone to investigate. It probably should be taken care of sooner than later, so that 1, our yards get cleaned up, and 2, someone takes care of those trees, because every time it rains, if you look at these pictures, there's nothing left to hold these trees up. And so we're just really hoping that someone in the village will be able to help us get these 9 truckloads of sediment. And I think it's someone's dumping it in your village, stormwater. This is not anything that's ever come out of the creek before. And it looks exactly like the stuff up by the library or by the post office where they're fixing it. And if you take 9 truckloads of sediment out of the village stormwater sewer, it might work better. So I'm just hoping someone will look at it.
Maggie, what's your address on Gilbert again?
1233 Gilbert.
1233. Well, I know the village manager will want to speak to the cleanup issue, but you've identified at least two issues. And obviously, you're absolutely right. We had over 1,200 people who were so affected by the floods back in April that they've either responded to a survey or applied to FEMA for assistance, including wiping out their basements and a lot of things. And obviously, we can't do everything for every private situation.
Absolutely.
And if it's purely a private matter, then that raises some particular issues. So I'll let the village manager speak to the cleanup issue in the yard. That's one issue. The second issue is with respect to the erosion along the creek back there. And I'm not completely, I'll take a look at your property, but I suspect that if that's private property, then we are somewhat limited in what we can do in terms of the creek.
I'm under the impression that you already have an easement back there.
Well, if that's true, then that would be one thing. If that's not true,
Yeah.
and that's very easily, that's black and white. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's either one recorded or there isn't.
Absolutely.
If
There
there's
are
one
tree-
recorded, then that's one thing. If there isn't, then that's absolutely right. We just can't go in on private property and maintain
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely.
And in terms of what came down, gosh, I think we saw things of a biblical proportion back in April, and I think a lot of us saw many things we've never seen before. So I don't know if that's necessarily a
Right.
comment on the character or the quality of the stormwater system, but
I
obviously it
realize-
was an
yeah.
extraordinary event.
I realize that the floodplain that we live on is called the 100-year floodplain, and it floods every year. So it's no longer a 100-year floodplain. This flood was much worse. It stayed out of the banks for about
Sure.
26 hours. So
Sure.
I get that, but this is stuff that's never come out of the creek before. We've always been able to clean it up, but this is 9 truckloads.
Okay, well,
So-
and obviously I don't know the details of the situation, but let me kick it over to someone who does know the details.
Okay.
Well, we'd be
Village
happy
Manager
to,
Dave Fieldman.
we'd be happy to help, but we do not have access to that property. We don't have an easement, and this is a situation where we would benefit greatly from having the easement, so we'll continue to work with those property owners, hopefully secure it, and then we'd be happy to take that away at no cost to them, just in exchange for a permanent easement, because we have an ongoing issue of creek maintenance. We have this project to help them clean up for, and then we have ongoing projects and to maintain the trees, as was talked about. So we've been working behind the scenes, and we like to continue to do that.
Okay, well, obviously I know that the residents and all of us would appreciate that very much, and maybe there can be some follow-up so that everybody knows what's going on in real time.
Yeah, I think that we'd be interested in what you want to do with the 40 feet of our property. I guess that's the other thing. Just sign it off and go, okay, come back when you, what's the plan? There's no plan. It's just 40 feet. So I think that's the issue. Everyone agrees that
Sure.
you can have temporary, easement to go in there and try to help clean this up, but to give someone 40 feet of your property and go, let us know when you figure it out, seems a little bit irresponsible.
Sure. Well, actually, there's two things there. One, an easement isn't necessarily you giving up your property. You're giving up a property right, which is your ability to manage it in the way you otherwise might, but without getting all the details of what
Right.
an easement is, you're not giving up your property per se. It just limits how you can use it in the future. But that actually is the key to being able to maintain it. And I know there is a plan. It may not have it in a blueprint right now, but we don't do stream bank stabilization projects without lots of advanced planning. So there would be one before a shovel went in the ground.
Okay, thank you.
But hopefully we can continue to talk, and obviously want to keep doing everything we can. You have to let me know what the quality of that sediment is, because I might want to take a truckload of it.
She's got a baggie, you can take it.
I need a lot more than that.
She said
unfortunately.
glass bottles.
No, I don't know if I need the glass bottles.
No, I don't think so.
Thank you for coming and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Ross from Unlimited Fire Restoration. We're located at 5104 Walnut Avenue in Downers Grove at the old fire station. Today I'd like to present to you our discount program to all village-owned property. We have 35% off the prices I have attached to the program that's being handed out to you. And I'd also like to ask if there's any type of opportunity that we can be added to your existing rotation program for board-up services. I had the board-up services division.
Well, thank you for being here. It's always nice to meet one of our stakeholders. And what I would ask is that perhaps you would provide your information to our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker, who's on the end there, and he can put you in touch with most likely the folks at Public Works who might find value in that information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Thank you. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Good evening, Dr. Goodman.
Good evening, Mayor Tully, commissioners, staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Meadow. And I want to join in the comments about obtaining easements along the drainage ways in the village. I think that is and has been for a long time a very important issue. And I'm hoping that the attention that is being focused on it now can lead to a program where the village actually does have something that it can advertise to its residents as an easement program and make this the initial phase of acquiring easements along drainage ways throughout the village. Right now, it's done on a piecemeal basis. People feel that they don't know whether the village is taking advantage of them or they are participating in a widespread public effort throughout the village, which it should be. And I hope that this is an opportunity to recognize that and to actually put in place a major program associated with drainage way easements throughout the village. I have some experience in following the attempt to stabilize the banks along a branch of St. Joseph Creek that crosses 59th Street in my neighborhood, just west of Brookbank. And the experience there has not been very favorable for the village and the relationships between the village and its property owners of that area. I'm hoping that that is not the sort of example we're going to have, but that we'll have more positive examples to talk to, because I really feel that I'd like to help advertise and push this program. Ever since the 70s, when I was involved in a floodplain study, I felt that this was a key missing element in the village's water management program. We have a very good structural program. We have a good acquisition of drainage detention and retention areas, but we have failed to implement a serious drainage way easement program up to now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Goodman. I will say we are working on it. Good evening.
Hi, Reverend Scott Oberle, First Congregational United Church of Christ, 1047 Curtis Street. Wanted to thank the council and mayor for, particularly Representative Neustadt, for coming and meeting with our churches on the issue of stormwater drainage. One of the concerns I bring tonight was the continued limiting of core services that directly affect members of our community, like senior transportation subsidies, Meals on Wheels, Heritage Fest. And I understand that all of these rationales are financial and smaller government, and personally I agree with that stance. However, limiting these things to the private sector and then charging fees for stormwater to non-for-profits and churches hurts those non-for-profits' ability to take on some of those added burdens to the community and to help those who need it most. We'd like to continue in dialogue with the council about the merits of such legislation, which are unique, I believe only two of their kind within the state, and some concerns over the line between church and state that have traditionally stood in our country and in our state. I bring with myself tonight representation of 8 different congregations: St. Luke's Presbyterian, First United Methodist, Emmanuel Lutheran, First Baptist, St. Joseph's Roman Catholic, First Congregational United Church of Christ, St. Paul's United Church of Christ, and Hobson Road Community Church, along with approximately 500 signatures from members of these congregations, with the hope to be in continued dialogue with the village about the constitutionality of this legislation and how it affects our wider community as we work together to try and help those within the community, but also make Downers Grove continue to be the great place to live that it is. Just leave these wherever you would like them.
Please, if you can hand them to Mr. Baker, Reverend, we appreciate it.
Thank you for
and thank you for being here. And I will just share with you some of the comments that we have shared with some of your colleagues who have appeared before us before in the wake of the introduction of the new stormwater utility in Downers Grove. We clearly have heard from folks who previously, under the property tax faith-based system for paying for stormwater, which, as we've heard tonight, is obviously very critical and very expensive and something that we have to attend to because water knows no boundaries. It also doesn't know the difference between municipalities and private businesses and not-for-profits, unfortunately. And so we have been hearing from folks who are obviously in support of it because it was previously, the burden was disproportionately borne by one segment of the community when the whole community contributes to stormwater. So there was something that was very inequitable about that. And yet, on the other hand, we've obviously been hearing from folks who previously were not paying into that system, and not surprisingly, I don't blame them one bit. Now that they're contributing, which is what spreads out the cost to a broader segment of the community, that obviously they prefer not to have to be paying that. So we fully understand that, and of course we understand that particularly not-for-profits and faith-based organizations, any additional cost, fee, charge, or expense comes at a premium because you're already doing everything you can with what you have. So we appreciate that, which is one of the reasons why we've tried to encourage and reach out and educate all not-for-profits and faith-based organizations with respect to opportunities to reduce the fee and how it might impact them through different activities and credits and whatnot that are built into the system. And we're still early on in the program. Whether there might be some enhancements to those types of credits or not, I don't know, but we're going to be looking at it as a council undoubtedly pretty soon, and there may be some things. I don't want to create any expectations because if you start limiting too much from the system, then it sort of defeats the purpose. But we also appreciate the things that during the Great Recession the village had to sort of take a step back from. We have been actively exploring ways to work with both public and private entities to try to see if we can accomplish things differently, but to get to the same result in cooperation and collaboration with others. The upcoming Rotary Grow Fest, which starts very soon, is an example of how a community event can continue without the village being directly the sponsor of it, and yet the village obviously has to facilitate that. And so we do look for opportunities to enhance the mission, the shared mission of our shared constituents. So whenever there are those kinds of things, we do think of those. And also, we're always entertaining regional solutions. So there might be things that maybe the village isn't doing as a municipality anymore, but how can we work with other municipalities, maybe county or township organizations to try to better serve our shared constituents? And that goes for all organizations. In this day and age, you just can't not work with other people. So I understand that, and I only repeat all that because some of your colleagues have approached us before, and I wanted to share those same words with you.
I have heard them, Mayor, and I appreciate them. I would ask the council to consider that many of the signatures on there are already individual residents and business owners of Downers Grove, and so are actually paying double the fees. And that's more the issue, rather not to share the burden. I understand the share the burden issue as well, but those fees going towards church tithes and missions and ministries are really in effect affecting many of our members doubly, some of them triply. So I just ask you to consider those things and continue to be in dialogue with us, and we'll respectfully do the same.
Understood, and I just hope you also appreciate that if we had to pay for it by increasing property taxes, you'd be in the same situation. But I understand, and obviously there are pros and cons to that discussion. We've heard them, and we will continue to hear them, and thank you very much for being here and continuing to engage in the dialogue. Good to see you. Good evening, Mr. Falish.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and staff. Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening to the lawsuit that Bradley's filed against the village.
What's the status of the lawsuit? I'll have to defer to what publicly available information might be available to our village attorney, Enzo Petrarca.
It is still pending.
Oh, it is. What's the
still
schedule? Is there a hearing or something going on?
There's currently nothing scheduled.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
they just filed an amended complaint, and we have a couple more weeks to respond to the amended complaint.
Okay. Yeah,
What that
now-
tells me is that it's very early in the process.
Yeah, but this has been going on for quite a while.
Understood, and if we could accelerate matters, but unfortunately I do not wear a black robe.
Okay. Okay, now, my next question is that the other half of the pavement on Brookbank. Now, the village is not in favor of raising that portion, are they?
I'm going to defer this back to Manager Fieldman again.
Since that issue is part and parcel to the pending lawsuit, we will wait for the resolution of the lawsuit and then continue appropriately with the balance of that section of road.
But it is my impression that the village is not for raising that the roadway, is it?
I think the short answer is I don't know, but it sounds to me like it's tied up in the legal dispute, and so for that reason, A, may not be able to answer that question right now, even if we wanted to.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
I said A and I didn't have a B, I apologize. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from anyone in the audience? Hearing none, we will move to item 5 on our agenda, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so that will take us right to item 6, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any items on the consent agenda? We have one forthcoming.
Mayor,
Hello again.
Hello again. I'm still Gordon Goodman. I still live at 5834 Meadow. I wanted to congratulate the village on this comprehensive financial report and point out to people that this is really an excellent document, the annual financial report, to find out what is going on in the village. The summary as well as the details are excellent, and I think it's a very good thing to have available on the website through this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from the audience with respect to the consent agenda or any of the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Oh, hold on a second. Just making sure you're paying attention. Do any members of the council have any questions or comments on any items of the consent agenda? Commissioner Olson?
I wanted to comment on just one echo Dr. Goodman's comments. I think the comprehensive annual financial report is excellent. I have enjoyed perusing that as a finance major and somebody interested in that, and I commend the staff and the finance department for their time in putting that together. And I'd also encourage residents to take a look and see that this is truly lean government. This is your government spending public dollars wisely. So just wanted to encourage everyone to look at that. And I also wanted to commend the staff on this Pure Fitness Trainer class and working across with other organizations. It's another great example of how we can work as a community with other organizations, as the mayor had stated earlier. So just wanted to thank the staff on that as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council on any of the items on the consent agenda? Sorry about that, April. Please, now may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 7, our active agenda. And we have a loaded active agenda tonight. We'll start with item 7A. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance restricting parking on 61st Street?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance restricting parking on 61st Street as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner Olson?
Just, if you were here last week, you heard I expressed a bit of concern on this item. I took the opportunity this weekend to get out and enjoy the weather and talk to a few people in this area who are directly on 61st Street or adjacent to 61st Street, and hear their thoughts, and they're generally supportive. I just ask that the staff, if you could take a look and work with the residents to ensure that the south side of the street, where there will be parking allowed, there's continued maintenance, and take a look at the gravel there. That was a concern the residents expressed, because they do want to have the ability to have parking for both their own homes and for school events at Fairmount School on the south side. But of course, we need to make sure that that's maintained in good condition as well. So thank you for presenting this, and I'll be supporting this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. Brings us to item 7B on our active agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance adding a loading zone to the alley east of 1050 Curtis Street?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That matter also passed unanimously. And by the way, for those of you that may not have been here last week, we did workshop all these items last week. So if you don't hear any comments or questions tonight, it's not for a lack of prior discussion, analysis, and debate. It's just we did that last week. And presumably questions have been answered. So after that brief message from our sponsors, we'll return to item 7C. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use permit for a sports/physical training and physical therapy business at 1422 Brook Drive?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use to permit a sports, physical training, and physical therapy facility at 1422 Brook Drive as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from any members of the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passed unanimously. Brings us to item 7D as in David. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would rezone property at 960 75th Street from R1 Single Family Residence to B as in Boy 2 General Retail Business?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois, codified as Chapter 28 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code, as amended to rezone property located at 960 75th Street as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, matter passes unanimously. And now, we move to item 7E as in Edward. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would rezone 4249 Highland Avenue from R4 Single Family Residence to B as in Boy 3 General Services and Highway Business?
Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois, codified as Chapter 28 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code, as amended to rezone property located at 4249 Highland Avenue as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the council? Tough crowd tonight. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. And finally, that brings us to item 7F as in Frank on our active agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance that would rezone 2551 Warrenville Road from M1 Light Manufacturing to B3 General Services and Highway Business?
Mayor Tully, I move that we adopt an ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois, codified as Chapter 28 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code, as amended to rezone property located at 2551 Warrenville Road as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from members of the council? I'll just add that once again, I appreciate staff working with the petitioner on this project to seek a different path that would actually achieve a better solution than I think what they initially were talking to us about. I think that an expanded project will be both good for the business as well as for the community. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. And that brings us to the end of our active agenda. Brings us to item 8, our first reading or workshop agenda, where we entertain items for discussion and presentation purposes only. For potential action at a later point in time, it's customary to turn this part of the meeting over to Village Manager David Fieldman, who I believe is going to probably pass the ball by the looks of it.
Yes, I will pass the ball on the first item, which is an amendment to provisions for the administration of our electrical test to our Community Development Director, Tom Dabereiner.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. An ordinance has been prepared, amending portions of Chapter 8 regarding business and activity licenses and regulations, specifically Section 8.38 and 8.39 of the Municipal Code relative to electrical contractor testing and licensing. The current requirements are laid out there, and one of the sections especially I'm here to talk about tonight, and that requires the Community Development Department to prepare and give the exam. Currently, we had some concerns about this, lack of in-house expertise, test proctoring, the time that's involved in weekly test provision, kind of a less secure testing environment here compared with the alternative that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and the fact that electrical codes have changed tremendously over the years and are a lot more complex. The proposal is that we would work with the International Code Council and their certification and testing program. They have over 60 years of experience in preparing really solid exams that link the test material with the certification or the licensing that's required. And then Pearson VUE, Pearson VUE, who is the largest commercial testing company and education publisher in the world. You can talk about a little bit more about that if you would like. They will provide a higher quality examination for each adopted electrical code, no matter what code we have adopted at the Village of Downers Grove. They provide a much more secure testing environment, shifts the risk to a qualified testing agency while retaining the Downers Grove brand, and from my perspective is a plus because it increases community development staff availability for some of the more traditional building and planning issues that we need to deal with increasingly in an improved economy. The applicant benefits as well through greatly improved test scheduling and flexibility. In the past, we had offered the test once a week, and there are really no time constraints if we move to Pearson VUE. There are multiple locations worldwide. They're in 175 countries. There are locations in the Chicagoland area. They do provide an optimized and accessible test environment. They provide nationally recognized test results as well, and they provide immediate turnaround. And you're leaving that day knowing that whether you've passed or not. And I think that's a good benefit for the applicant as well. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Dave Reiner. We always appreciate the animations. We look forward to that every time. Any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Please. Good evening.
Good evening. Anthony Ching, 5507 Aubrey Terrace. Seeing this on the agenda, I actually will support the initiative. Having gone through several professional certification exams through VUE, I find them to be a high professional caliber, and just wanted to say that this is a very good avenue for the village to take, just from my own personal experiences. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Other questions or comments from the audience on this item? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Commissioner Rankin?
I did have some questions that were answered ahead of time, so I appreciate that. I tested the system a little bit, put our address in, and there's testing locations all around here, which is great. So we're not taking away anything from anybody that's going to be testing because it's still nearby. The cost increase is not significant, so that shouldn't be a burden to anyone that's taking the test. And I think it's great that we're going to be saving some staff time and streamlining the process. So I'm in support of it. I would ask, though, after we see how a year goes by, is it performing and everything happening as we hoped? And I'm sure it will go that way if we have a professional organization taking care of it. So I will be supporting this next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. By outsourcing this and privatizing it, we pretty much, there's some savings in the risk of liability, correct?
That's correct.
Can you just expand a little bit? You and I did discuss this earlier, but if we can get some of that information, either now or later, I would appreciate it, just so residents know that
Sure.
it's not just a convenience, but it's actually helping us with our risk rating. I mean, I know that we accept it, or we accept the CAFR report. We also go through a risk rating, which has an impact on us as well through all of our ratings and bonding and so on and so forth. So I think it's good, and I commend staff for moving this one forward. Anytime we can reduce the risk to us as a community and organization as a whole, I think is the right thing to do.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Olson?
I just agree with what Commissioner Reinking, Commissioner Durkin have expressed. I did inquire about the cost of this, and I agree with Commissioner Reinking. This is not a significant cost increase, but I think it's important that we make sure that those applying are aware of it, and especially someone who's reapplying, make them aware of if we can make them aware of why there might have been a slight cost increase, if that's a concern. So thank the staff. I think this is a great way we can save money and be a more efficient and lean government. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Next item, please.
The next item is consideration of renewal of our membership dues for the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference. And I'm actually going to turn this one over to the Vice President of this fine organization to discuss this renewal, which happens to be our own Mayor Tully. Also with us tonight are executives from DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, including their executive director. This is a budgeted item. Staff does recommend approval, and the authorization comes with dues of approximately $36,800. So with that, Mayor and Mr. Vice President, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm only going to briefly introduce the topic, and I do want to recognize our two guests who are here in the audience. Tonight we have from DuPage Mayors and Managers also Executive Director Mark Beloga and a past president of the DMMC and current executive committee member, our good neighbor from the west, Mayor George Pradle from the fine city of Naperville. And I will briefly introduce the topic to my colleagues, although I think we all kind of know what the subject is about. We've had this discussion before. Want to give you an opportunity to speak, and then also any questions that the council might have of our guests. Again, full disclosure, I recently took the position as Vice President of the DuPage Mayors and Managers organization, but trust me, with all the time that goes into that, I'm not doing this for fortune and fame. I'll tell you that much. It's for betterment of all municipal issues at a regional level, which is really what it is. For those in the audience, and my colleagues know this already, DuPage Mayors and Managers is essentially a trade association of municipalities. I believe we have 33 municipalities in DuPage Mayors and Managers right now. It's a council of governments that represents 1 million residents in DuPage County. And like many trade associations, whether it's business or professional or industry, we get together and speak as a unit with respect to issues that affect municipalities generally. And that one very important aspect of that is taking positions with respect to Springfield, the county, and pretty much any other governmental unit, the federal government, wherever our voice might need to be heard on issues that affect municipalities, everything from pension reform to how state and federal funds are used. Again, lots of legislation, much of which can either benefit or be very harmful to municipalities. That's one big role. But the other big role that has certainly expanded, and I'll touch upon this later when I speak without the Vice President hat on, is as never before, the need and the embracement, if that's a word, of cooperation, collaboration, and communication amongst municipalities. We talk here as a village about how we need to partner with not-for-profits in the private sector and other bodies of government, other taxing bodies, in order to continue to at least maintain the same services for our shared stakeholders, if not enhance services. And it's just impossible to do that these days within the current cost structure without working with others. So to me, the collaborative aspects of it is probably the biggest benefit of it, in addition to all the legislative and the other positions that take place. But what I just want to outline very quickly is, I know my colleagues have had the opportunity to ask a lot of questions, both of staff with respect to our membership, to ask questions directly of DMMC through Mr. Beloga. We have a fair amount of information, so I'm not going to repeat it all for everyone, other than we've had questions such as, for the price of admission, which is $36,000, it's nothing to sneeze at. What are the benefits from that? What opportunities do we see going forward? And there is another question, of course, What is the commitment of, nobody cares about my time because that's my problem, but what is the commitment from our staff from taking a leadership role within the organization, at least for the next couple of years, not forever. And also the question has been asked in the community and on this dais. Several years ago, we left membership in DuPage Mayors and Managers for reasons we don't need to go into today, but that was approximately 2008, 2009, if I remember correctly.
Probably 2010-ish, yes.
2010, okay, I'm sorry. And now that I'm 48, I start to forget things. We rejoined about 2 years ago, and so another question has been asked fairly is, well, what's changed? And I'll be happy to address some of that when it comes to my comments, but I really want to give this opportunity to treat it like a workshop and allow my colleagues to ask questions of our guests, of myself. So I'd like to do that, and then I can comment later or respond to any questions. But as long as we have our honored guests here, Mark or Mayor, would either one of you like to address the council? Good evening, Mayor Pradle.
Mayor Tully and Downers Grove City Council, thank you for this opportunity to come together and talk. I don't usually get to be on this side of the podium, and so it's kind of refreshing. I see a resident of Naperville, and back over here.
Hey, it's not acceptable. Don't be pulling them up.
Over here, Nan Newland. Oh man, it's so exciting to see her. You've got a great person in Nan Newland, so I'm happy to be here. And also Bob Porter, our police chief. I just have worked with him on so many committees. You have a wonderful police chief who really knows what he's doing and keeps the peace over here in Downers Grove, and I'm very proud of him. Sean, I'm always happy to be with you. You provide a smile on my face every time we get to talk and be involved in the mayors and managers. It's a delight. When he sits at the table, we all have a smile on our face, and he brings us good entertainment. So I want to tell you that we in Naperville are a home rule community just like Downers Grove, and we're just a couple of miles down the street. And we've been involved with the DuPage Mayors and Managers since the inception of the conference. And the council members, our council members, serve on as many committees as they can. And even though we're the largest city in DuPage County, we also enjoy the fellowship of every city, village, and community in DuPage County. A long time ago, we were, as a council, said, what's in it for us? How much return do we get for our investment? We found out that that's not what it's all about. Each of us share many of the same problems in our cities of running a city, town, or village, and we can avoid many snags if we learn from our surrounding cities. We need to stick together because there's power in numbers. You know, 90% of the cases that we're all involved in, we have the same legislative challenges and solutions. And as a group, we are able to access a larger number of legislators. And our lobbyist works with DuPage Mayors and Managers lobbyists, as well as your lobbyists and all the other cities around here, broadening our reach to all of our legislators. And on the sideline, the best way to learn the best practices of the other communities is getting together and talking about it so that everybody benefits from all the best practices that we have here. We also have the transportation funding program, STP, and we stick together and we try to do everything fairly, because it's not about any one individual town or city. It's about what's best for the whole community. And you know, you just were fortunate to get a underpass in Belmont, and all of us wanted you to have that underpass. I especially, because a long time ago I used to go to Puffer School, and I lived on Belmont Road, and I lived right next to Gall's Tavern there. We had a home laundry and dry cleaners. I had to cross that track every day, and I know my sisters and my brother my mother was always worried about us crossing those tracks. And so there's an accomplishment there, and we are so proud. When all the other cities and towns around us are successful, we're successful because we're all working together for the same purpose. And so I just appreciate the opportunity to say, stay with us and enjoy the fellowship that we have, not just for fellowship, but for making things happen, because as we go down to Springfield, a while back, we merged together to kind of challenge AT&T, and with the U-verse expansion, and we were very successful because we were all together. So we just want to rally around all the cities in DuPage County and be one in a positive way. And we just thank you for your involvement in DuPage mayors and managers. Thank you for letting me be here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Prater. Always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for coming here and give our best regards to the citizens of Naperville. Mark, I don't know if Mr. Beloga, I don't know if you want to do any comments or just be available for questions. This is a workshop, so basically we're going to open it up and talk about it, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss this with my colleagues.
Sure. I'll just add one very brief comment, if I may.
Sure.
In addition to the answers that our office provided to the prearranged questions from the commission, I wanted to go further on one of those aspects, because I know one of the points that's important here and for a lot of our members is what is the return on investment for the dues. And Downers Grove, like Naperville, like a number of other towns, are at that maximum rate that we have of $37,000 and about $800, $36,000, about $800. And just to let you know that we are including this year with the invoice of the dues statement a value statement about the conference, and that either should have been received very recently or will be received in the extremely near future along with the invoices. And as Mayor Prater mentioned, it's extremely difficult to put a dollar amount to a lot of the things that the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference does, but we did look at those things where on a very regular basis and year after year, the conference provides services that if communities were to do them on their own, such as the lobbying, such as the technical analysis and assistance on applying for the SDP federal road monies. We looked just at the staff replacement costs of those, and we've come up with an estimate of around $97,000 per year for just about every community in our membership, not including all of the policy work that we do, but simply the staff replacement on the analysis and work that we do. So I just want to offer that, and Manager Fieldman will be seeing that information coming to him shortly if he hasn't already, and then certainly I'm happy to answer any additional questions that the council members may have.
Terrific. Well, thank you for being here, Mark. We appreciate you being here. With that, it's a workshop, so I will open it up to questions or comments from the council with respect to we went back to DMMC, our membership, about 2 years ago. We have to consider this every year for membership. It's that time again, so we're having the discussion, and welcome the opportunity. Questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Newstead?
I'll go first. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Prater and Mr. Beloga, for being here tonight. It's always helpful and nice to see you both. This is a value proposition, and for me, as you know, I've been against this since 2010. We talk about what do we get back from Mayors and Managers Conference. We talk about the networking for our staff and the fellowship with our staff and employees amongst other communities. There's other things out there, STP grants. Part of my concern with the conference and how we have not, I think, seen a lot of change since 2010, when at least members of this conference or this council have said we're not finding the benefit. Things like STP grants, you know, they're going to be little things, but to me they mean a little bit. When we receive the STP grant email, there's a charge for members to file for the grant. When we have these, the annual dinners, there's charges extras for those. So now I'm relating the $36,000, whatever it is, to some extra expenses. But I'm going to steal Commissioner Barnett's thunder a little bit. He's not here tonight, but there's another expense, and it's our staff time. We figured it out to be a number of hours. I think the total came to be about $13,000 worth of staff time just here in Downers Grove. Now, we just heard from Mr. Beloga that quantified that at $97,000. I agree with Mayor Pradel that there isn't always a tangible benefit that I can hold in my hand and point to and say, here it is. But I kind of work on, in my experience, I've been to some of the mayors and managers conference committees that I've been assigned to. I probably should have been to and avail myself to more, but I'm not available during the day as often as some of my colleagues. I look back over the last 3 years and look at things like municipal aggregation. We had Will County Municipal League here in our chambers asking to partner with them. It turns out we partnered with the Village of Westmont and had a great opportunity there for aggregation. I look at our work internally with the Village of Westmont again on a 911 dispatch cooperation. Again, a great outcome working within 2 municipalities. One of the biggest things that I have seen an improvement in actually in the last couple of weeks, maybe in the last week, is the communication. I've been getting a couple extra emails from Manager Fieldman and Mayor Tully regarding legislative action and some of the committee reports from the county. I personally would like to see those coming right from mayors and managers. I read through some of the materials here that there seemed to have been a filter from the conference to mayors and managers, and then the information disseminated in the communities as the mayor or manager saw fit. Personally, I think that there should be a lot more communication from the conference on how we are being represented, not only at the committee meetings at the conference, but also in Springfield. We talked about lobbyists and how we have used lobbyists successfully here in Downers Grove. Obviously, the greater good of the county with a bigger lobbyist has a bigger presence. I understand that. But I think each community sometimes does have the ability to hire and find their own lobbyists. As far as Manager Fieldman and Mayor Tully taking over some of the leadership roles, I'm glad that that would be the case. I think with Dave and Martin in those positions, we'll be able to be very close to the day-to-day operations and start to set the tone of the conference to go even further than a lot of the information that we've received from Mr. Beloga on how the changes have been made. I have full faith in Dave and Martin to try and carry our message in the way we operate down in Downers Grove as a lean and very efficient organization, and I think there's a lot of things that we've done here in the last number of years that can be taken to anywhere, both private and public business, and be useful. I'm very hopeful that if this is approved, that Dave and Martin will have the ability to change and manage those expectations, at least my expectations of more communication, better outcomes, more representation, and really, you know, part of this is about the investment in the value. If that investment from Downers Grove can come down, I know we're at the top level. It seems like the conference has been working within their means, but it also would be great if we could see any kind of reduction in our conference dues. That would help make that return on investment a little bit easier. That's all I have for now, Mayor. I know I went a little bit long there. Appreciate the extra time. My colleagues and I, actually all of us, have had a lot of conversations about this individually, which I think is always a positive because we get to share our opinions and feelings with each other. So to them, it's no surprise that I will not be in support of this as we vote on it next week. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments, discussion? Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to also thank Mayor Pradel and Mr. Beloga for being here today. I think the not easily quantifiable things that the Mayor talked about aside, to me it does boil down to value. And we are, as they have presented, seeing $96,000 worth of value in return for $37,000 or so in dues, plus even if we add on the staff time, that's another 14, so that's $51,000. That's almost 2 to 1 in terms of dollars in and dollars received and value received. If we were to lose the membership in DuPage mayors and managers, we'd be losing access to the lobbyists, we'd be losing access to additional analytics and research, and hopefully those are things that can be expanded and take on some things that are done in-house, not only by Downers Grove, but by other municipalities, and continue to provide an increased return on investment. When we talk about the possibility of hiring a lobbyist, I think that's perfectly fine to look at, and I think it's been effective in the past, as we've seen. But I think that's most effective when we have something that maybe the rest of the community isn't as invested in. When we can identify certain things that are discrete, and we can point the lobbyist on these things and send them down to Springfield and say, accomplish these 2 tasks or these 3 tasks. as opposed to the biggest issues that we're seeing these days, such as cutting the local government distributive fund and the obvious pension issues going on in Springfield and throughout the state. I think those are things that are common to all the municipalities throughout DuPage County, throughout the state of Illinois. And I don't think we need necessarily a lobbyist to go down to Springfield and voice Downers Grove's position on that, because I think it's well known as it is throughout the county. That being said, if we're able to identify discrete projects, I would be more than happy to revisit the hiring of an individual lobbyist. But as I said, for me, it comes down to return on investment. We're getting about 2 to 1, and that's a pretty good deal. So I'll be in favor of this when we vote on it next Tuesday. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Rankin?
Excuse me. I've been kind of back and forth on this. The last time we voted, I voted in favor of staying with, re-entering the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference. And the main reason for that vote was mostly about the benefits of networking. So I pledged to myself that I would get more involved and try to see if I could achieve some of those benefits. And I did participate in some meetings, and I felt that there should have been, kind of in line with what Commissioner Neustadt was saying, is the communications directly with elected officials. I don't think that happens enough. And I think that the elected officials and the conference would benefit from more direct communication with the people that are really making decisions and voting on the membership. So the cost of membership is significant, and I think that's why we're all kind of grappling with this choice. For me, the questions are, are we receiving enough value in terms of increased opportunities, enough value in the time savings in gathering data from other municipalities, and are we fostering relationships with staff from other communities via networking to justify this significant investment? And are the benefits we're receiving worth the staff time that we are losing here at home in Downers Grove? So I'm still grappling with this decision. There's been a lot of good points on either side, but I'm really leaning towards not voting for this next week. In my work life, I've served on committees and walked away with a lot of tangible value and benefits from the time that I've served. And then I've served on committees where I didn't get as great of a benefit of my participation in time. So that's just my opinion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Well, we're not going to close it off. It's a workshop. But let me jump in on a few points.
You want me to go?
What's that?
You want me to go and then you can wrap up?
Oh, and not necessarily wrapping up. If you want to come back later, go ahead.
I was referring to Commissioner Olson as a comments, but
Be my guest.
I've been the most active member in this organization dating back to my days when I was an alderman in Darien. That's how I know Mayor Pradel, and we joke around with each other. I've been a big supporter of this over the years. I had my doubts. I voted no several years back for us to leave the organization. And I voted because I didn't see the change. And I think we did miss out as a community. Excuse me, we missed out not necessarily as, us sitting up here, but it was our staff that was missing out with the opportunities to network and brainstorm and, develop best practices, so on and so forth. So when it was a vote to go back, I supported it because I thought there was enough change to support or for me to change my no vote to a yes vote. And I hear you. I hear you. There are concerns. And I still have my concerns as well. But I think the concerns that we all have collectively can be addressed, especially today, with the role of our mayor to be the incoming president, because that's normally what happens when your vice president become president, unless you say, no, I don't want to be president, mayor, and with our manager involved. If we are truly, honestly sitting up here saying that we want to see change and we want to have this benefit or that benefit, we want to reduce fees, and that's an area I have concerns with, and I agree with Commissioner Neustadt. I think this is the time, and this is the place that we can make that change. I will be supporting this, and I encourage all of you who are on the fence, maybe a no, a solid no, I don't know, doesn't matter, it's a workshop. I think this is the time to collectively, together, support our involvement, because it's going to be us collectively working and participating in this organization when our mayor is in charge of the organization as the president. This community has had the history of having a mayor in charge, and I think it was just one, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, and that was Mayor Betty Cheever. And this really is an organization that has a lot of potential, and I say that because I truly believe we have not maxed out at the DuPage mayors and managers the potential that this organization has. For some of the concerns we had, because some of the former members were kind of set in their way, which was one of the reasons we eliminated our position with the organization, there's been a big change. And I don't mean to take any thunder from the mayor, but there are 12 new mayors elected in DuPage County. There's 12 new members, leadership members of power, if you want to call it that, within the DuPage mayors and managers. So with our involvement, us going in and saying this is what we want to see changed and what we'd like to see done, I think this is the only way and the only time you truly have to change and make direction of what we all want to have, and that is with us being in the front seat. Sure, the concern is, okay, so we do it the first year, what do we do when Mayor Tully's past president, so on and so forth. Once the wheel gets going, guys, it's going to continue unless somebody gets in there that's just a cowboy and changes everything. I don't see that happening. I got involved, and I've continued to stay involved, and I currently serve on the Budget and Operations Committee. And I've been doing that for a number of years. And there has been a lot of cuts. There's been a lot of loss in revenue from programs that were very successful in the early days that aren't as successful today because of the internet. One of them being the auction. So there is a lot of discussion amongst the members of these committees, and these committees are represented as in the board, the executive board meetings, with our concerns. So as we sit here and we say we want to see reductions in the cost, all of this is actually being reviewed, and they do have long-term goals and objections on their website that spell out a lot of what some of our concerns are. So in closing, I think what we need to do is really analyze the opportunity, the unique opportunity that we as a village have on the future and the direction of the mayors and managers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to I'll give the floor back to you, Mayor, not turn anything over to you. But I appreciate the opportunity to share my 3 cents.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olson, did you want to comment, or?
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
On the staff, since we have representatives here. The fee structure, we're at the highest level in Downers Grove. What is the fee structure? Could you explain that just a little bit?
There are minimums and maximums, and for towns such as Downers Grove, where it's more than 25% of your population is in DuPage, then it's an 88.8 cent per capita, up to the maximum of the $36,776.40. So essentially, any community that's at about, I think it's 41,400 and some population in DuPage County would also be at that maximum.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Few comments from my perspective, and let me answer 2 questions that are probably in people's mind, and then make 3 points. The questions are probably why we spent all this time talking about $36,000 when we passed a bunch of things tonight that value amount a lot more, and we didn't have the same kind of conversation. And the reason is because this is something that we did for a long time, and then we left, and then we came back. So there's a decision here, but it's not just about a 1-year membership. Candidly, if we're going to do this, we're going to be in for a while, because in order to seize the opportunities that Commissioner Durkin talked about and make the kind of changes that we're talking about, it's not going to happen overnight. We're really talking about charting a path for at least the next 2 years, and then we'll see where we're at. And if we don't like where we're at in 2 years, it won't be from a lack of trying, it will be from having had our hands on the steering wheel. And that will be a different conversation altogether. So I think that this is a good conversation to have, and because it does take a commitment of both the council, staff, and the community. So we should have this conversation, and I welcome the opportunity to have the conversation. The other question is, how did this whole vice president leadership thing come about for Mayor Tully? Isn't this just something so he can go off and run another organization? Absolutely not. Trust me, if we don't go forward with this and I don't have the leadership role that's anticipated in this organization, my wife will write every single person in the audience a handwritten thank you note. Because there's at least 3 or 4 meetings a week in my life for this much compensation. So this is purely for altruistic reasons. I want to dispel that notion right away. What changed my mind? Because when I left the council as a commissioner, it was right about the time that the next council decided to leave. And I was probably with you back then. When I got elected mayor, one of the first things that happened was, to their credit, DMMC reached out to me and said, I know Downers has left, got some new people on the council, would like to come back and see what's going on, see what we're doing. So I was invited to participate in some meetings at the leadership level within the organization to really see for myself what was going on. And I started to learn very quickly that, like any trade association, and I'm sure if Laura Crawford, the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Downers Grove, was sitting here, she would tell you from the highest mountain that a trade association of businesses in Downers Grove has tremendous value and opportunities that are both tangible and intangible. But I started to realize that being in the room with the mayors and managers of other communities in DuPage County, talking about significant legislative and policy issues and also practical issues, well, how can we do things better? How can we adopt best practices? How can we learn from Naperville? How can Naperville learn from Downers Grove? How can Itasca, something we adopt there and move around, which actually benefits all of us? Plus, that ability to speak with a voice of 1 million people. We compete with Chicago all the time. They got 6 million people in Chicago. It's kind of hard for Downers Grove to compete with Chicago. But we go down to Springfield or we go to other parts of the, either different levels of government, and we speak with the voice of 1 million people. It's a little easier to compete with Chicago and some other places than it is Downers Grove. I mean, we're terrific, no question about it, and we can hire a lobbyist to do specific things, but if we're really speaking to a broad General Assembly, I think that's a pretty big megaphone to have, and I think very important to have. How do you put a price tag on that? I don't know, but it's pretty important. But the other thing that I realized pretty quickly is I was starting to hear that maybe the manager of Hinsdale went to some ComEd meeting that I couldn't go to, our staff can't go to, and brought back that information and told us, well, here's what ComEd is doing with the review board, and here's where municipalities might be affected. That's valuable information that then I bring back, either myself or it comes back to our staff, and we now have it without having someone sit at a 4 or 5 hour ComEd review board meeting somewhere, or in a Metropolitan Mayors and Managers Caucus meeting, or an IML meeting, or whatever it might be, a county stormwater. Having those people either at those county, state, or other levels who can participate on our behalf. It's not just the staff of DMMC. It's the Dave Fieldmans and the Mike Bakers and the Andrew Petrarcas, although you have no equal. Sorry, Mayor. You have no equal in other towns. But their peers are out there doing these things and then bringing the value of that participation and that leadership back to us. So, yeah, we benefit from that. What's the price tag on that? I don't know. It reminds me of that commercial, tickets to this, $50, a glass of soda, but that kind of information can be priceless. I know we have another guest in the audience who didn't want to be noticed coming in, but talk about having an organization that collaborates throughout the entire county. Mr. Bedeloff is here from Choose DuPage. There's certainly a lot of benefits to collaborating, and I know that one of the things that DMMC has been doing is working closely with Choose DuPage, which again, we can do, but doing it on a regional basis can be even more powerful and more important. So this is what got me sort of back interested in the organization and thinking, maybe there is a benefit to this. But then, like my colleagues, I started voicing some of the concerns. Well, we didn't have such a great experience in the past, and what's the value proposition? And I was met with the response, well, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Get involved. You want to make changes? Step up to the plate. So I did, and that's what led to this path of first getting on the committee chair, then being on the executive board, now the incoming vice president, and if we don't get thrown out next year, the president of DMMC. Because I believe if we're going to demand changes or value from an organization, then we shouldn't be spectators. We should get into the mix of it and make it happen. We've done that here in Downers Grove. Didn't happen overnight. We've done that here in Downers Grove. And I think we can do it within the organization. I think we got some great people, as Sean mentioned, both existing members as well as a lot of new members, that we can really harness that energy and get out of the organization, get out of our membership exactly what it is that you would like. And one of the things that I've asked my colleagues is, what is it you would like to get out of it? Because we have the unique ability to do that. For example, better information. What we just had a board meeting, was it this week or last week at DMMC, about the very issue about direct communication. Now, I will tell you, without going into the hairy details, that every community is different. Not every community has the same mindset or the same culture that we do. But the proposal is that each community can decide. So that if we want to have everyone gets direct communications, that's what we'll have. And so those are the kind of things where ask for it, and we have the ability, of course, in consultation with our fellow members, to make those kinds of things happen. So if we do this, I would challenge everyone to what is it you would like done, within reason, and we can get it done. So let me make my 3 points then. I kind of touched upon them already. And the 3 points are value to membership, what has changed since we left, and the hours commitment by not so much me, because you're basically getting that for free, ladies and gentlemen, but the commitment of staff. A fair question, which goes on top of our membership value. The value, there's both tangible and intangible benefits. I won't repeat the dollars and cents discussion that Mark, you provided, and Commissioner Jose, you already went through. But then there's some of those intangible things that I've already talked about. Just the benefit of the information, people being at different meetings with regulatory agencies or with this outfit or that outfit, that we don't have people who can go down there and participate. Someone else can, and yet we get the benefit from it. But then there's the collaborative opportunities that we've been working on over the last couple of years. For example, we've been looking at, I know Commissioner Durkin's favorite topic, is there anything that we can do as a region with respect to water rates? We're not going to do that alone as Downers Grove. I got news for you. We might do it as a county. Now, where that goes and how that can happen, but to even have the ability to have that conversation is going to happen amongst 33 municipalities, not one. So these are some of the things that, if you want to talk about value, what can you do collectively that you can't do individually? Another example is we're now talking about mosquito abatement districts. Right now, there's, 45 different contracts to take care of mosquitoes throughout DuPage County. They're all with the same vendor. Why do we have 45 contracts? The county is sponsoring a program right now. There's a task force there, which is going to be asking, or has asked DuPage managers to help coordinate with the municipalities in DuPage County to try to see if we can get one big best practices, best type of spraying and mosquito abatement activities, and with the idea of not only getting better service, but at a better cost. And then again, something that, sure, we can negotiate, but I think 45 can negotiate much better than one. Another initiative that's going on is with the fire services stakeholders. Are there some possible practices that could at least be discussed, not necessarily mandated or dictated, but at least described on how there could be better cooperation amongst fire departments and fire districts throughout DuPage County to maintain the same level of service without increasing the costs? And again, that's not something you can do by yourself. Sure, can we work with our neighbors, like our 911 dispatch center? Absolutely, and we'll continue to do that. But these are even broader opportunities that are being explored. And again, I think that's only something you can do in a true collaborative environment as a member of this kind of a trade association or council of governments. Another example is, and this is Manager Fieldman's initiative, and I will butcher this, so I apologize. But basically, it's talking about how public works contracts are bid so that at least the mechanics of that are done consistently throughout the region, which will provide better responses from the bidders, which ultimately will translate into better value for the participating communities. And this is the example of where best practices, we can teach others, but we can also learn from others through our collaborative experiences. So I see a lot more things like this happening. So those are the tangible and intangible things. What has changed since we left? Well, a few things. One, I think Commissioner Durkin touched upon it. We have a unique leadership opportunity, which I'm very grateful for. We didn't walk in and demand it. It was something that was collaboratively and collectively arrived at. But we have the opportunity to, if there's something this council would like to see in terms of enhanced value from our membership, we have a unique leadership opportunity in conjunction with the rest of the executive committee and, of course, the MMC staff to try to make that happen. We didn't have that 4 or 5 years ago. In fact, I think it was mentioned we haven't had that since Mayor Cheever was the president of DMMC. So that's one what's different now than was then. The other thing Commissioner Durkin touched upon is we have a lot of new members. Not that there was anything wrong with the older members or the former members, but we have a lot of new people that are coming in and they're asking the same kind of questions. What is this organization doing for my community? What can we do in conjunction? What can Roselle and Bloomingdale and Wooddale do together that they couldn't do before? There's a lot of energy and excitement about that, and I think that's at a higher fever pitch than it was in the past. And then last, speaking of fever pitch, I don't think that cooperation, communication, and coordination has been as much of a discussion topic now as it ever has been before. Or it's more so now than it ever has before is what I meant to say. And I don't see how we can talk about collaboration and cooperation and be an island unto ourselves. I just don't think you can do that. I think in order to fully embrace that concept and to work with both other municipalities and other taxing bodies to try to do more with less or do more with less, do the same with less, you have to do that in collaboration and cooperation with others, and this is a vehicle by which to do that. I've already given some examples of things that are happening. I see a lot more, which leads to my real point here, in that I don't view this so much as a value proposition or looking in the past, but I view this as an opportunity that lies before us, both in leadership and collaborative opportunities that will benefit us and also the rest of DuPage County, and that it's something that we really ought to embrace and lead. We talk in Downers Grove about being leaders, about being proud about our staff being leaders, about the community being a leader. Well, here's a prime opportunity to lead it in DuPage County, and I think it would be unfortunate if we didn't take advantage of it. So I really view this as a going forward proposition and a very exciting one. Sure, we have to review this every year. So 2 years from now, things don't pan out the way we like, we can have a different conversation, and I'll probably be the loudest voice in the room if things don't turn out the way I think they're going to. Lastly, and this is the third point, let me just touch upon the hours issue, because that has come up recently, and it's a fair point, and I mean the hours of our staff committing to it. In the short term, I don't think there will be some time that Manager Fieldman will be committing because of his enhanced leadership role within the organization, but that will only be for a year or two. And then it'll go back to what it was. But still, we have a number of staff members who are involved in DMMC on various committees and whatnot. And I think it's a worthwhile investment, not only for the dollars and cents that Commissioner Olson mentioned, but I'll go back to what I said about leadership. Last 2 years that I've been mayor, we have talked up here repeatedly about how proud we are that Downers Grove are leaders, how proud we are that our staff members are leaders within their organizations. I'll just take a couple of examples. Chief Porter is going to be the incoming president of the Illinois Chiefs Association. Our deputy manager, Mike Baker, has been executive board member of the International City and County Management Association. Not to pick on the two of them, but when they take those leadership roles within those kind of trade associations in their areas, we applaud them. We don't question how many hours they've been spending on it. We applaud them for their leadership because we know that they benefit from it, and in turn we benefit from it. So that's how I see that additional investment by our staff members in this organization is another example of their showing the kind of leadership that we've come to expect and demand here in Downers Grove, and I think it's something that we ought to embrace rather than discourage. So that's my piece, but again, consider my words as biased as you want. Other questions or comments, since we're still workshop conversation? I don't know if you have anything else, Commissioner? Not to pick on you, I'm just asking.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate your comments, and certainly don't have nearly as much to say. And I've thought a lot about this, and look forward to continuing to hear about this. Thank you, Mayor Pradel, Mr. Beloga, for being here. I think that's important, and I think it shows a commitment to Downers Grove from the organization that you're here today, and I do appreciate that. Of course, I'm always concerned with fiscal responsibility. That's fundamentally, I think that's very important. And I do certainly want us to be communicated with, and Mayor, what you were saying. My other question was going to be, we received some updates from Manager Fieldman, and would it be possible for us to either, if Mr. Fieldman would continue to send us those, or if we could receive those directly? And I think we do want to be involved, and even though I may not be able to attend as many of the meetings given my full-time work and my inability to come to stuff during the day, I'd still like to be involved in that sense. So, at this point, I'm leaning towards supporting it. And of course, I look forward to continuing to hear if there's comments from residents, comments from other members of the council over the ensuing week, and I look forward to the vote next week.
Thank you. Two things. On the information, in the short term, we'll do that directly ourselves. Sometimes I don't always get to it when I'd like to, but we'll do that. And then, as I mentioned, we're already in discussions in the executive committee about having that done directly. For whatever community chooses to do it, that way we're not dictating to some other community how they handle their communication. But we can do it in the way we want. I just want to go back to one other thing that Commissioner Neustadt said, because it's another fair point, and that is we should always be looking at the cost of membership, not just the value from the membership, but the cost. And I pledge to you that's one of the things that, given the opportunity, we'll be doing.
Thank you.
Because I think you're right. That's something that we look at here, and I know Naperville does too. Every community has to, so this should be no different. So I guess more to come. Other questions or comments? Any questions from our guests?
Audience.
Yeah, I have a comment. There's a number of committees that are part of the mayors and managers outside of just the dinners and the drive downs to Springfield and the lobby days. So I would encourage you, even if you do decide to vote no on this, please get involved. The dinners are one thing, but if you really want to see the workings of this organization, get involved with one of these or one of these committees, and they do meet at various times. And there's no reason why something like one of these committees could be their time for meeting be adjusted, because the committees are made up of village staff from DMMC, county personnel, us. These are working committees that revolve around go around our schedule. So I would encourage you to do that. And I do know that there's an opening on the, I believe it's the legislative, which is where Commissioner Schnau spent so many years on.
We actually owe DMMC, assuming we go forward, and I've just been holding off because I wanted to have this conversation first and not be presumptuous. But there are 4 committees, to your point, Commissioner. Intergovernmental Planning Program, which is focused on, as the name suggests, intergovernmental cooperation. The legislative program, which is the hardcore municipal positions in terms of primarily Springfield. Regulatory issues, I was talking about ComEd and other regulatory agencies and dealing with some of those issues, such for example, when electrical aggregation went in and ComEd wanted to have the smart meters, all part of that legislation. There were hearings on it. There were people there that brought information back to us. The transportation program is another committee, but I will be challenging everyone if we do go forward to participate in those more heavily. And I'll just give credit where credit is due to Commissioner Barnett. Even though he's been a steadfast opponent since 2010 of participating, when we have been in, he's attended the legislative committee meetings along with our village attorney, Enzo Petrarca. So I have confidence in all my colleagues that if we go forward with this, that we will continue to see that kind of participation by everyone. And if there are certain committees that were better fits or times, then obviously we'll work that out, because I just know that from the Intergovernmental Planning Committee that Manager Fieldman and I were on last year, not everybody can make every meeting, but it's always great to have a good cross-section of representation of mayors and managers from different communities, because it really adds to the richness of the robust conversation, and that's where these ideas come from. So I'm glad you both mentioned that. Any other information or questions or comments that anyone has on this topic? Commissioner Olson?
I just comment that I would certainly be happy and would enjoy being involved. I would like to work with you, Mayor, and staff and the staff at DMMC to see if it would be possible for me to be involved, because while I would certainly love to be involved on a personal level, I think it's important that if we're going to be a member, to be involved fully. I also don't want to take the opportunity away from somebody else if I'm not going to be able to attend 2/3 of the meetings. So, just look forward to working with you to make sure that we're able to.
Absolutely, and one thing that might work is you can have two people assigned to one committee and they just split up going, so that not one person always has to go. But that we have representation and we're getting the benefit of the communication back.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
I know every time I leave a DMMC meeting, I'm immediately on the phone with with our manager, advising him something I've learned that's very, very important to our community. Terrific. Well, thank you. I appreciate the conversation, and again, I think it was a worthwhile one. Thank you to DMMC Executive Director Mark Beloga for being here tonight. I know another meeting in your life is not what you're looking for, and I especially want to thank Mayor Pradel for being here. I know you certainly don't need another meeting in your life, so thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you.
And with those compliments, Mayor Pradel is welcome every time here at the Village of Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
We have great shopping, a nice downtown, and awesome restaurants.
Before we leave the topic, Commissioner Neustadt reminds me that I did not ask if, or maybe I did, I don't remember if I did, but I'll ask again if there are any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to the topic of our renewing our membership in DuPage Mayors and Managers. Dr. Goodman.
Yes, good evening, Mayor. Thank you for including the audience participation too. Yes, I'm very glad to see that the village is again participating in this important conference, and I'm hoping that you do decide after this thorough discussion and evaluation of your membership that you'll be continuing particularly in this crucial next phase where, as it's been pointed out, members of the Downers Grove government really do have the possibility of influencing the directions taken by the conference. And you seem to have some fairly strong opinions about the directions that the conference should go in, and I'm very pleased to see that you may have the opportunities to implement those. So I've felt, well, I've been coming to these meetings for quite a while, 40, 50 years, and I felt that that kind of intergovernmental cooperation at the regional level was very important, and I'm glad to see that the village is beginning to move in that direction again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Tom LeCren, 545 Chicago Avenue. I just have a quick question, not to the pros and cons of Oregon, but there was recently a law passed in Springfield which gives 2 counties in the state the ability to create a stormwater fee like the one we have here in Downers. One of those counties is DuPage, and DuPage did not get the right for the people to vote it down. The other county did. Where was DMMC on this issue?
I'm actually glad you asked that question, because I can answer it both from a DMMC perspective, and I'm going to make Mark Beloga very nervous here. I can also answer it from a, as a District 3 representative to the DuPage County Stormwater Committee. See, I just can't have enough meetings in my life. That's how strongly I feel for my community. Actually, there was a presentation yesterday at a legislative breakfast update that Commissioner Rankin and Commissioner Jose and I were at that was put on by Representative Sanger and Representative Sandak. And Tony Charlton from the county actually spent the majority of the meeting, and Mayor Pradel was there as well. It was hosted by Naperville. Spent the majority of the meeting answering questions just like that. So don't shoot the messenger, but let me answer the question. First of all, that legislation was championed primarily by Chairman Cronin on behalf of DuPage County. DuPage Mayors and Managers was involved in dealing with the chairman's office and continues to be involved with dealing with the chairman's office to make sure that municipalities in DuPage have a voice in whatever comes of it. The legislation simply gave the authorization and to remove any legal hurdles, as I understand it, for DuPage County to put in potentially a stormwater utility. The legislation didn't actually put in a stormwater utility. It simply removed legal barriers to their ability to do it. It was something they talked about before. DMMC took a position on this and communicated with the chairman's office, because while we're all supportive of different measures in collaboration and cooperation, what this means in terms of impact on municipalities, obviously we're all very concerned about. I want to make sure that we're involved and have a voice. Downers Grove in particular has a very big concern. We already have a stormwater utility. We don't want there to be two in Downers Grove. So this is a voice that we will continue to put forward through DMMC and through Downers Grove and through my membership on the Stormwater Committee. The reason why the other community was...
Peoria.
Thank you, Peoria. I was going to say Rockford, Peoria. As at least it's been explained to me, Peoria didn't have any kind of a stormwater management program, so they needed legislation to even put them in that place, and that's why they had there's the need for the referendum, to even have a stormwater management, have stormwater, the ability to raise funds to support a stormwater program, to put it very simply. Peoria didn't even have that ability, so the referendum is there to give them that ability to do that. DuPage, again, as is explained to me, even though they're not currently funding stormwater projects with a fee, they're doing it through property taxes, there's already a program in place, so they view it as there's no need for a referendum because there was a referendum once upon a time and they've already been authorized to have such a program. Now the discussion is just whether or not it's going to be paid for through a property tax levy or through a fee. That's the answer from the stormwater staff at the county. But to answer your other question is DuPage Mayor's Manager, and actually Mark's here, he might be able to speak to it better than I can, has been involved in speaking on that issue on behalf of municipalities from the very beginning. And we'll continue to do so.
Were they pro or con? Did they lobby to get that bill not passed?
Well,
or did they okay?
The thing is that if done right, it could be a very positive thing. I think the concern is how it's going to be done. Right now, this bill just allows the debate to take place. So the thinking was, why shouldn't you at least have the debate within DuPage County as to whether or not to do it, and then if so, how? And from the perspective of Downers Grove, I can sympathize with that because that's exactly what we did. But Mark Beloga standing up to correct anything I said that was incorrect, was inaccurate.
Thank you. Not to correct anything that you said, but just to add a piece of information about the conference's position and our process on this particular legislation. We did attempt to have an amendment put in on this legislation that would give the referendum authority in Peoria County also to residents in DuPage County. And that was done, you were very correct in what you stated, Mayor, about pre-existing authority. But our position really came out of a group conversation that focused on letting the citizens decide this. And that's still the foundation of the position that DMMC is taking on this, is making sure that this is not going to be something that if it does unfold and is implemented at the county level, because now this would be authorized at the county, to make sure that the municipal residents and municipal elected officials are going to continue to have a voice in this. So we've been working with Chairman Cronin's office, and so far it's been a very positive conversation to make sure that if something is implemented, there is an opportunity for communities who do not have their own stormwater fee, as well as a community like Downers, which does have its own stormwater fee. And what's that impact going to be? Are residents in Downers going to suddenly be paying two, one to the county and one to Downers? Is there, what will happen to other towns who may wish to follow the model of Downers and do something such as Downers had? Those are things that really still need to be decided. But our office is committed to continuing to work on that on behalf of all of the communities in all the different situations that they find themselves throughout DuPage.
Thank you for adding that very, very important piece of information that I left out, Mr. Krennis. We actually did ask for an amendment to the legislation that would have allowed for a referendum, but it didn't pass, which is a Springfield issue. Good evening, Mr. Bedelov. Since I mentioned you by name,
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Greg Bedelov.
How are you tonight?
Choose DuPage. I'm good. Sitting at home watching the council meeting, and then this topic came up, and I thought, well, I better get up there and just let the council know that from an economic development standpoint, regionalism is just becoming more and more prevalent in DuPage County, much like Chicago and much like our friends in Naperville, becoming a region unto itself. And as our regional economic development efforts continue, having DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference at the table with Choose DuPage from a legislative standpoint, from an intergovernmental cooperation standpoint, and just from a general good place to do business because it's a region where everybody is focused on the same initiatives, pulling on the same rope, singing from the same sheet of music, pick your own bad metaphor, goes a long way from an economic development standpoint, which, as you know, goes a long way to continue to drive your positive economic development efforts that you've fostered here in Downers Grove through the creation of your own economic development corporation and your continued efforts to support business in Downers. So I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, and appreciate you leaving the warm confines of your home to come down and share those words with us. Appreciate it. Welcome back, Mr. Falish.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm wondering, now, it seems to me that we paid for, what do you call those guys that go and...
Lobbyists?
Lobbyists?
Lobbyists. We paid $30,000 for those lobbyists when we had them, didn't we?
Yes, there was a lobbyist that we engaged for, was it 1 or 2 years?
2 years.
That was focused on a specific task, and that was primarily with respect to funding for the Belmont Great Separation Project.
And then also to make sure local capital projects were included in the state capital bill. Both were successful.
Yes. Yeah, but wasn't that amount about $30,000?
$36,000 per year.
So I can't see any why you shouldn't do this. It seems to me that this is a good thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baelish. I don't think we were doing both, but I think that was a very Downer-specific assignment. So, and I don't think any of us are saying that if something like that came up again, we wouldn't focus on a very Downer-specific assignment. But I think that's the history.
Wasn't there also monies that lobbyist brought back that was owed to us from the parking garage?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, so there was a lot that $36,000.
Oh yeah, no question about it.
Actually,
That
it's a
was
good
outside of what the mayors and managers could have done.
It was outside of DuPage mayors and managers. We invested $72,000 and received about $10 million in funding in return. 8 of it was from Belmont Underpass. The remaining $2 million or so was from capital improvement projects that were contributions from the state.
Right. And those were that was an example of a very targeted use of a lobbyist from a Downers Grove perspective because it uniquely impacted us. And I'm sorry, any other questions or comments from the audience on this subject? Again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Any other questions, closing remarks, thoughts from council? All right, terrific. Well, that ends the, I'm taking your line. That ends
It may actually
first reading agenda.
Because it may end it because the last item is actually the opportunity to further discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry, after this one.
But I believe it was Commissioner Barnett who asked for this to be on, maybe others as well, but we actually started talking about this a few meetings ago. We have no further staff update. It is simply an opportunity for further council workshop discussion.
And since I spoke over you, we are referring to item 8C under our first reading or workshop agenda, which is an update to the bicycle and pedestrian plan.
That's correct.
But as long as we're at it, any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? In case someone came here to speak to this issue, I don't want to foreclose that.
Thank you again, Mayor.
If this was hockey, it would be, I don't know, 3 times is a hat trick. I don't know what 4 is.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately,
Good to see you again.
I'm often traveling these days, and so when I am in town and you have some good issues on your agenda, the things that I've been concerned about over the years, I do tend to stand up before you often.
I'm only kidding, Dr. Goodman. We're always welcome to hear from you.
Thank you. I'm particularly glad to see that you have a revision of the bicycle and pedestrian plan for the village. This update is timely. It's been about 10 years or a little more since you had a plan. I participated as it went along, but unfortunately I've been out of town, so I wasn't able to participate in your other workshops. But my comments are that I really support this moving ahead with the plan. I'm pleased to see you have phased it, and the second phase seems to be quite immediate plans for improvements that can be done. relatively inexpensively, and you have plans for developing funding for those that can't be done without more outside funding. I'm particularly concerned about the pedestrian portion of this plan, and the emphasis on facilities, that is construction of sidewalks or other improvements of crossings, are good. But I think there's a missing element here, something that I've been advocating for quite a while, that we want to have an overall idea of what pedestrian circulation goals we have for the community. And in particular, there are certain neighborhoods of our community that have been built on a cul-de-sac basis. And these cul-de-sacs are very pedestrian inefficient, unfriendly, because you get down at one end of the cul-de-sac and the only thing you can do is to walk out to the cross street, and then maybe if it's in a neighborhood like some of these on the southwest side of town where the next street is also going to lead into a cul-de-sac, you have a lot of, well, for cars it's not so much of a problem. Even for bicycles it's easily managed. But for pedestrians, I think cul-de-sacs are really quite awkward. And so I'd like to see a planning component in this pedestrian and bicycle plan that actually looks at the policies of the Community Development Department and whether they are pedestrian friendly as far as evaluation of subdivision, contours, and so far I don't see that component in this update of the pedestrian and bicycle plan. So I'm hoping that the staff will continue to work on that aspect of it. Maybe it doesn't have to be incorporated into the document that's approved by the council, but in light of this interest in pedestrian circulation and facilitation in the village and increased pedestrian use of our sidewalks, we should look at how the sidewalks are shaped and how our subdivisions are shaped. Is it possible to have more paths that lead from cul-de-sacs to other neighborhoods? Is it possible when you're approving subdivisions to have subsidiary paths that don't necessarily follow the street for pedestrian access? The last point that I'd like to make is that the village still has some undeveloped rights-of-way that are very good for pedestrian paths. And I think you have a policy to get rid of rights-of-way if the people adjoining them are willing to take ownership and pay the village something for that. I think the village should look at the possibility of some of these undeveloped rights-of-way forming the network for additional pedestrian paths in the community. Those are issues that are not addressed in this plan, but I think are planning issues that the village and particularly the community development staff should be looking at. This plan is developed mainly by the Public Works facilities. The Public Works Department is mainly interested in streets and sidewalks. The Community Development Department should also be involved and should be interested in pedestrian circulation in general and the possibility of additional paths. Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions, Dr. Goodman. We'll obviously take all that into consideration.
We do have a team that was working on it, including staff from both departments, and in fact, we are in the process of updating our subdivision code. You'll see that at the end of this year or early next year. And a lot of the planning guidance that is found in the draft update to the bike and pedestrian plan could be manifest and seen in the updates to the subdivision code, including many of the items Dr. Goodman identified.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments from the audience with respect to the proposed update to the bicycle and pedestrian plan? Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Rankin?
I just wanted to share with the audience that by us accepting this next week, that it doesn't necessarily create any action, that projects will develop from some of the suggestions in the plan. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everything in here is going to happen in soon, so.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olson?
Mayor, are we going to discuss this as first reading next week again, when Commissioner Barnett is back?
I think what I'd like to do is reach out to Commissioner Barnett and see if he has any particular comments or questions, and if it rises to the level of another workshop discussion, I think I'll place it there. If it's some comments that we could just share in the council responses, we could also choose to do that.
And if we end up having a conversation next week, even if it's on the active agenda, we can always defer it another week if we want to have another. This isn't a time-sensitive issue. Obviously, we'd like to proceed with it, but I don't think it's time critical. It's not like a construction project per se.
I'd certainly like to offer some additional comments, but having the full complement of council, I think, might be beneficial. So I'll wait to.
Sure. If that's the council's pleasure, by all means. Anything else at the moment? With that, I think we're at the end of.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor.
Our first reading. Thank you. Sorry about that. That brings us to item 9, Mayor's Report. I have no report this evening, so we'll go to item 10, our Village Manager's Report. Manager Fieldman.
No report this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 11, our Attorney's Report. Village Attorney Angela Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. Only one item to present this evening, and that is an ordinance amending the provisions for administration of the electrical testing. It will appear on next week's active agenda.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 12, Councilmember Reports and New Business. First, I will ask if any council members have any items of new business they would like to bring before the council. Hearing no items of new business, I would like to propose something that was suggested by Commissioner Neustadt, which is taking our councilmember reports and not tonight, obviously, it's too late for that, but in the future, moving them up in the agenda. Although we would have to be judicious in keeping the total amount of time to about 5 minutes, the idea being that when we report out on community happenings and events and activities, and Commissioner Neustadt can obviously describe it better than me, his suggestion that there might be more people, shall we say, in the audience at the earlier part of the meeting than at the end of the meeting. And so I thought that was a good idea. I appreciate you suggesting it. And if everyone else thinks that would be a good idea, we can experiment with that, and maybe starting with next week's agenda, we can move councilman reports up to the front if everyone's in agreement with that.
Sounds good.
Very good. But so for the last, or at least temporarily, the last time we'll have them at the end of the meeting, councilmember reports into business. We'll start with Commissioner Jose.
I have no report, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Rankin.
I just wanted to remind everyone there's 2 deadlines coming up. The FEMA deadline is July 9th. So if you want to apply for FEMA disaster assistance, you have until July 9th to do that. The other deadline is to participate in the 4th of July parade. Community groups, businesses, anyone can. There's no fee. The application is available online, and that deadline is June 13th, which is just a few days from now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Coffee with Council will be next Saturday, the 18th, 9 o'clock. And please note, the location for Coffee with Council will be McCollum Park. And for those that were at the Coffee with Council last year, this is where we discussed the bike plan, pedestrian plan that we spoke about here. And Nan gave bike tours. So I don't know if that'll be part of the agenda, but it will be at McCollum Park. And last year we met at the shell, or whatever we call that, by the baseball diamonds. Just south of Fire Station number 5. So 9 o'clock, we'd love to have you there. Bring the kids. There's a great park for them to all play, or park equipment, playground equipment to play.
And we this year will probably be more in the thick of the action right around the concession stand area in the middle of the baseball and softball.
Oh, okay. So between the diamonds.
Yes.
And it's this Saturday, right?
Yes, the 18th.
The 15th.
Or 15th, I'm sorry. Right before Father's Day. How could I forget?
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olson.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, the 12th of June, is the annual Bike to Metro event. And Bike Club is having a table east at the train station, so for all commuters who plan to bike to the station, stop by. I'm planning to stop by in the morning before I head on the train, and just wanted to say my cousin came today, my cousin Mark came to experience what municipal government is actually like, and so hope he had a good experience at this meeting. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Newstead.
I think Mark's still awake back there. I can't really tell. Yeah, he's moving, so that's good. This is one of those items that I think moving our council reports to the beginning of the meeting when we potentially have more audience members will benefit us. The Downtown Management Corporation is presenting a new event, Music on Main. Every Sunday between June and July from 1 to 3 p.m. there'll be live music at Pocket Park, which is that little area kind of between the historic cemetery and the wine cellar in downtown on Main Street. There's some nice benches there. There'll be live music for us to enjoy as we shop and stroll in beautiful downtown Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just three things real quickly from me. First of all, just in advance, I want to congratulate Chief Bob Porter on his upcoming installation as the new president of the Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police. There will be an event here in Downers at the end of June. I had to chide him about it being in the middle of Grove Fest, but I think that's a big honor, and we congratulate him on that well-earned position of honor within that organization and salute his leadership. Speaking of Rotary Grove Fest, I must point out that there are exactly 8 days, 3 hours, 2 minutes, and 41 seconds until Rotary Grove Fest hits the streets of Downers Grove. Hopefully the biblical rains have passed and we will have a wonderful multi-day street festival which everyone enjoys and can come out and enjoy. Hopefully there will be some good weather, neighbors, and lots of fun and music. We'll look forward to that. And last, go Hawks.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'd like a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
Do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
He changes.